What's up, guys? In today's video we're going to talk about how to structure your food during peak week. This week's Fan Friday comes to us from Daniel, and he asked, what in your opinion is the best protein source to have when in peak week? And I wanted to take his question and take it to another level. So Dan, thanks for your question. Peak week is the time obviously leading up to someone's competition, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there that people think is true, that they try all these crazy things during peak week, especially with their food and water, sodium, you name it, they're training. In reality, peak week is just a time period where you should be putting the finishing touches on your physique. And I think a lot of people first think that their protocol is going to, be the best thing in the world and it's going to help them totally transform their physique, when really it's going to make a very, very small change to their physique depending how ready and how lean you actually are. The leaner you are, the more changes you're going to see. The fatter you are, the less changes you're going to see. I wanted to start with that. In regards to your food choices during peak week, I'm going to go through what to do with fats, carbs, and protein, and just your food selection in general, because I think that's a largely overlooked topic when it comes to bodybuilding. In regards to your protein intake, what Dan was getting at, I would, and this is pretty much across the board, what you're going to hear from me, is I would stick to the foods that you are usually eating. One major reason why I recommend that people stick with the foods that they're eating is because they're used to digesting them. If you're used to digesting certain foods and you know how you respond to those foods, your body is going to be much happier. You're not going to have any bloat, from possible allergies. You're not going to have any kind of reactions. So you want to eat foods that you've been normally consuming. So for me, what do I eat normally during peak week? I eat, chicken, some beef, and then protein. Protein shakes, that is. So those are my major intakes. At the beginning of the week, I do still eat my Greek yogurt. A lot of you guys know that I'm a big Greek yogurt guy. But at the end of the week, I do pull that out just to take dairy out of my diet. I've been recommending that to a lot of people. I've noticed that with myself. It just kind of helps with any water retention, any extra bloat. Not that I have an aversion to dairy, but I've noticed it makes a subtle difference in my physique. So I completely cut that out starting on Thursday, Friday, and of course none on show day. Otherwise, I'm keeping in my protein shakes, my chicken, and my beef pretty much every single day. The same thing can be said with the carbohydrates and with the fat sources. So you want to eat carbohydrates that you've been eating the entirety of your prep. Now, in the past, I've made the mistake, and it was through a recommendation of how to peak before, to eat sweet potatoes. And I ate an exorbitant amount of sweet potatoes in a very, very short window of time. Come to find out that sweet potatoes, for whatever reason, they cause me to become extremely gassy. I do not process sweet potatoes very well, meaning I really don't break them down in my body, and you could only guess what comes next. So it causes me a lot of distress, and causes my cortisol levels to go up because I'm in a lot of stress with my stomach, and I have to go to the bathroom or I'm plugged up. So in the past, I was forcing sweet potatoes, and now that I'm a lot more educated, I understand that, I probably shouldn't be forcing new foods down my system during peak week in exorbitant quantities. And for the record, I used to never eat sweet potatoes, and I'd only eat them during peak week or like a week or two before the contest, but it wasn't in the exorbitant amount that I would eat, in a carb up method the day before. So now I eat my normal foods. What did I carb up on? I carbed up on regular potatoes. I carbed up on regular Cheerios, foods that I normally eat. Some people carb up on, rice and rice cakes, or even bread, or even pancakes. Controlled, obviously, but things that, they're used to normally eating. The same thing can be said with fats, although I feel like people kind of, their fats aren't as high at the end of contest prep, so they're not eating an exorbitant amount. So I feel like fats don't make a big of an impact on your digestion as possible. So in peak week, I would recommend keeping your food sources very similar to what you are eating previously. Like I said, I would pull dairy out towards the end of the week. I would pull any kind of artificial sweeteners out, maybe towards the end of the week as well, Wednesday to Thursday. I think those two subtle changes can improve someone's physique alone, besides having to manipulate water and or sodium. But I wanted to focus more on the food for this one. And of course, if you're wondering what to do with your water intake during peak week, the best case scenario is you to leave it absolutely steady if you're questioning it. Some people say to cut water, other people say to load water, and if you're really debating on what to do, you can just always hold it steady. The same thing can be said with sodium. Just make sure you have a nice constant amount, and you don't want to be manipulating too many variables during peak week. And I wanted to finish with that is because if you start changing too many things during peak week, and you look good in the weeks prior, and then you start changing everything, you might not look better. You could actually end up looking worse during peak week if you're making too many changes. So if you just want to focus on a couple things during peak week, maybe one, especially being carbohydrates, and then really that's the major one that I would honestly do. I hold water steady. I would maybe up sodium slightly leading into the show, especially the day before the show, to make sure that we have enough in our system to help shuttle those nutrients. I'd make sure we have enough water in our system, maybe just a little bit above average of your water intake. But as far as food goes, and that's the point of this video, is you want to eat foods that you're used to eating. You want to make sure that obviously you're spacing out your meals appropriately. You don't want to be adding any extra things to your meals. You want to be eating extra added foods that you weren't eating previously. And if, for example, you find that you have an aversion like I do to sweet potatoes or something along those lines, don't be forcing those foods down, because there's other foods that you could carb up on. So guys, hopefully you learned something in this week's Fan Friday. As always, keep dominating every aspect. I'll see you soon.